Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. Happy mid-September, everybody. In theory, we should be easing into fall, but I don't know about you. Where I'm at, we are not so much easing into fall. We are staying firmly in summer. It is hot. If you hear fans, I'm sorry about that, but I have a little bit of a fever right now, and I'm already hot, and I'm just trying to keep myself cool. Today it's been I'm filming this the weekend before you guys are seeing it. It's been a weird weekend because I'm somebody, I guess I'll just share this with you guys. I struggle with anxiety, and specifically health anxiety. I realized once it got really bad that it's something that I pretty much always had, even when I was a kid, but especially when a friend of mine passed away unexpectedly and my dad got sick, the way my stress tends to manifest is in health anxiety. And then right now I have a recurring infection. I'm just prone to getting this certain kind of infection. It's not that serious. It's the same level, sort of like a UTI kind of thing, but it does make me get a fever. And then I think because I've been stressed out this week, it's manifesting in health anxiety. So anyway, I'm just feeling, I didn't sleep that well last night. I'm feeling a little fevery still. If it doesn't stop, I'm going to go to urgent care and see if I can get some antibiotics, because usually it'll just go away, but I think maybe I just need to go get some antibiotics. But anyway, you don't care about any of that, but that's where my head's at this weekend. In terms of reading, I've been trying to read some just to sort of take my mind off things, because if you have anxiety, one of the best things you can do is try to kind of distract yourself. So I've been taking a couple of baths and meditating and reading and try to just focus my energy elsewhere. So I have had a pretty good reading month so far this month. I was looking at my ratings, mostly pretty high and mostly hits or surprises, only a couple of disappointments. In terms of things that I can talk to you guys about, I started this month off going to BookNet Fest, which was such a great time. I've got my vlog up somewhere with shout outs and stuff in it as well. But because of that, I didn't get as much reading done at the beginning of the month as I would normally. But I still have read 10 books so far, a lot of that because of audio and finishing up some things I had in progress from August. And mostly things that I've been enjoying. So before I went to BookNet Fest, I did a reading vlog, which you guys will be seeing. I can't remember if it's this week or next week, but basically the idea of being what I read in a day, just to show you guys how I manage to read as much as I do. And during that vlog, I will be talking about The Diviners by Libba Bray. So that was a 19 books I want to read in 2019 pick for me. So I polished that off, which I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Liked, didn't love. If I wasn't getting through it as quickly as I probably would have DNF'd it, but you'll see the full rundown of that one in that vlog. I also read Faker by Sarah Smith in that vlog, which is a contemporary romance that is coming out in October, I believe. I really ended up enjoying it. I think objectively it's more like a 3-star book, but I really loved it. It has sort of a fan fiction quality to it that I really just liked. I will say that it's a very one-dimensional story, which is why I think objectively probably should be 3 stars. There's just not enough other things going on besides the relationship, but it's a hate to love work relationship and I just liked it. So I gave that 4 stars. In that vlog, what else did I read? Oh, I read Dying of Whiteness, at least part of it, and then I finished that off later, but Dying of Whiteness by Jonathan Metzl. Really liked it. Very good, very thought-provoking. Basically, it is about how toxic white masculinity that causes folks in certain communities to hold certain ideologies and vote in certain ways and have certain practices around owning guns, things like that, how that actually, it's not just that that's not in their best interest in terms of fiscally or economically, but it is a psychiatrist who wrote this book, and he is looking at how those attitudes actually impact health outcomes, not only for that community, not only for the white men basically involved, but for communities as a whole. So he looks at gun violence, and specifically suicide and accidental gun violence. He looks at certain states' failure to expand Medicaid and the impact that has had. And then he also looks at what happens when schools get defunded or like have their budgets cut to the bone in the name of like reducing taxes, basically. So anyway, it's a really interesting book. I think it's a little dry, so I wouldn't put it at like top tier nonfiction, but I gave it 4 stars and I thought it was really, really good. So I read that in that vlog, or at least part of it, and then I started A Man Lay Dead by Ngaio Marsh in that vlog. I had read a couple of her things back in the day when I was sort of in the fervor of Kristy and like trying to find other authors who would give me similar vibes. And I definitely don't like Ngaio Marsh as much as Agatha Christie, like even after reading this. But I was surprised that I ended up getting along with this pretty well, especially after I got past the first like third, like basically once we get a body. I really ended up enjoying this a lot. And this, I had kind of seen this mentioned as an isolated closed circle mystery, and I would disagree. I don't think it's that. It is, though, a very effective country house mystery. So I ended up enjoying that pretty well. So you'll see some discussion of all 4 of those books in that vlog whenever it comes out. So I got through that. I read Celebrity in Depth by J.D. Robb because that was my next in-depth book that I needed to read, and I'm officially now caught up on schedule. It wasn't one that I particularly loved. I gave it 3 stars, mostly just because the kind of trope it's playing with is like a Hollywood death, and like I don't usually love that in mysteries, like when all the suspects are in the biz. It's just not one of my favorites, though there are some nice like character moments in it. So I'm now caught up for my planned schedule, so I'm currently reading, we'll talk more about it, the one that I was meant to be reading for September. Let's see, I read Losing Earth, A Recent History by Nathaniel Rich, and this is basically far more depressing in my opinion than The Uninhabitable Earth that I read earlier this year and enjoyed so much, because this is basically a history of how scientists discovered that global warming was an issue, or climate change was an issue in the 70s, and tried to get people to do things about it and could not get anyone to do anything about it back when we had a real chance at turning things around. Because one of the most depressing things you learn in The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wells is that more like half of all carbon emissions have happened in my lifetime, aka after when they realized this was a problem. So I think that this is an incredibly important history. I'm glad that somebody has documented it. I don't know that as a book it's like the best nonfiction, like historical nonfiction I've read. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. But in terms of like the information in this is shocking, upsetting, and something that I'm sure our children will very much hold against definitely the boomers, but also my generation. Like we're trying, but oh man, it's bleak, guys. So anyway, I read that. I read it between audio and reading this in physical form, so I got through that. Then I read Quit Like a Millionaire by Kristy Shen and Bryce Leung as an audiobook, and then I got a physical copy because holy shit, guys, this is a 4.5 star book. I got this because one of my goals, like life goals for the year, was that I wanted to start figuring out some of my retirement stuff. Like I've just not been, I've been doing like what I'm supposed to be doing in terms of getting, employer matching and whatever. But I hadn't really thought through like, what is my strategy? Because I've had some awareness of the fact that like, well, right now it's just me. I mean, I'd love to meet someone and be a dink. That would be awesome. But, I make all my plans assuming it's just me. I make a pretty nice salary. I don't really have debt. I probably could retire a little bit early. So that was one of the things that I wanted to think through this year of like, could I strategize and maybe be able to retire at 50? Well, after reading this, I'm like, could I retire in 10 years? Maybe. I think it's possible. I need to sit down and do some more math. But I think that this is a really, really helpful guide for thinking through how to make, even if you don't, like this whole thing is the FIRE movement, financially independent, retired early. And these guys worked basically for 10 years and retired at 30. And they kind of explain how they did that. I think in the sense of like a practical guide of like thinking through how to make actually pretty conservative financial investing decisions could be helpful for anyone, regardless of what your retirement goals ultimately are. But I think to me, what's really interesting and effective about this is that Kristy Shen actually came from China. Her father ended up coming to Canada as a PhD student, but prior to that was in a Chinese labor camp for 10 years. She, like, one of the opening anecdotes is her climbing on a pile of medical waste, trying to find things. Like, she came from abject poverty and was able to retire at 30. And so I think what's really cool is she weaves in some of her memoir elements, but her whole point, like, no gimmicks, no luck, and no trust fund required. Her whole point is that you do not have to come from money to be able to save money and to make decisions that allow you to have more financial freedom than I think a lot of us kind of even think is possible. And for that, even if you didn't end up trying to follow exactly what they did, and I'm going to start doing some math because maybe I'm going to do that. But even if you don't follow precisely what they kind of lay out here, I think that the principles in here are really helpful. And I also just think it's really inspiring to think through, like, you know, these are not people who, like, invented Apple or who do have some, like, crazy, really aggressive investment strategy. These are people who have figured out something that I think really is pretty replicable for a lot of people. And I think in that sense is very sort of like paradigm opening in terms of, like, oh, like, are there ways that I could adjust my spending or saving habits that, even if I don't want to retire in 10 years, would give me more financial freedom and more flexibility in terms of maybe not having to work a 9-to-5 for as long as I thought I would. So anyway, this I'm going to be spending more time with and really drilling into, but I definitely recommend this as, like, practical nonfiction that also effectively works in anecdotes from the author's life in a way that really drives home what they're trying to talk about. Okay, and I read a few, I know I've read other things this month. I think I read a few arcs of some romances that are coming out this fall, like the Matchmaker's Mistletoe Mission by Jaci Burton. I thought that was pretty good. I've read a few other things that if I need to talk about that, I will do that in a different video. But let's transition into what I'm reading right now. So I am reading 3 things right now. First, I am listening on audio to Serial Killers, The Method and Madness of Monsters by Peter Vronksky. So I'm listening on audio and then also following along a little bit in the actual book. And yeah, this is super fucking scary, but really interesting. This is basically a history of, like, how serial killers came into the public consciousness a lot more. Like, it talks through what it means to be a serial killer and how that's different than other kinds of murder. So far, it's sort of speculating why we've identified this more in the modern age. But I think it's going to essentially end up being a history of serial killers and, like, going back into, like, older history. So I'm really excited. I'm enjoying it so far. I picked it up now because I potentially want to use this for a video that I'm doing in October. But this is really interesting, like a different kind of historical nonfiction. And so far, very creepy. I was listening to it last night when I was finishing up doing some work outside my garden, and it was getting dark, and I was like, you know what, maybe I'm going to go inside. This is scaring me. So I'm enjoying this so far. I have just started dipping my toes into the 10,000 Doors of January by Alix E. Harrow. Not very far into it. I will say so far, the writing of this is really beautiful. That's the part that I'm enjoying the most. I'm not super sucked into the story yet. We'll see if and when that happens, but to be fair, I've not read all that much of it. And this was my YA Book of the Month Club pick for this month. If you're interested, link below, all that good stuff. But I will say that it is in the YA Book of the Month Club pick, but it is not actually YA. It does feature a protagonist of that age range, but I've seen a lot of confusion of people not sure if it's YA or not. Just to be clear, technically it is not, but I think because the age of the protagonist, they felt like it's appropriate for YA readers. So there's nothing in this so far that, like, would keep this from being something a YA reader would enjoy or could read. So I think that's kind of where the crossover there is. But it's basically like historical fantasy. There's doors, capital D doors. We talk about that in the opening. And yeah, we'll see what happens. The protagonist is racially ambiguous, and I think that's an interesting element. It is, though, set in 1901, so you can expect to see some 1901 attitudes towards somebody who is racially ambiguous. So just warning there. But I'm enjoying that so far. And then I just started my next in-depth book this morning, and I can already tell I'm really gonna like it. It is Delusion in Death, and this one opens like really compellingly. So there's like a terrorist, it's, the back of the cover was talking about it being like a domestic terrorism kind of book. I'm always kind of 50-50 on that for mystery thriller type books. Like, that's not necessarily my favorite trope, but it can be done well. And I have to say I'm really intrigued by this version of it, because the opening scene is all these people in a bar in downtown Manhattan, and slowly they all start getting just like really angry and pissed off at each other. And then before you know it, like they're literally like stabbing each other in the eyeballs and stuff. Like they all just turn like ultra violent against each other kind of at the drop of a hat, and I think it's going to be some sort of like bio weapon. So I think that's a super interesting idea and way to kind of handle a terrorism plot and make it make sense for why a homicide cop would get it, which would be Eve. And it just reminds me that one of the things I really love about the In-Depth series, there's so many things. I cannot wait to catch up, guys. I will be caught up, I think, if my schedule's right, by mid next year. I cannot wait to do a big video about it. But one of the things that I love about this series is the fact that it is near future. So it has like some sci-fi and like speculative fiction elements in it that I really enjoy. And things like this, where there's like in this version of our future, there's a bunch of different sort of like designer drugs that react in extreme ways to people depending on how you combine them. And I always enjoy plots that include that, because I just think it's an effective use of this sort of near future world as part of a mystery. So anyway, I'm excited about that. I'm only about 10% in, but I kind of, as soon as I'm done filming, I think I'm gonna go sit in urgent care and read that because I'm really enjoying it. So that's what I'm reading right now. And then in terms of what I might read next, so I've got 3 more arcs that I'm wanting to read this month. So I want to read A Cowboy Under the Mistletoe by Jessica Clare. That comes out in October. Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren, which also comes out in October. And then, so both of those are contemporary romances. And then White Elephant by Trish Harnetiaux, something like that. One of you lovely subscribers told me about this book and said, hey, I think that this is an isolated closed mystery. Have you heard about it? I had not. I read the description and it sounds like even if it's not quite isolated closed circle, it sounds like it's pretty close. And basically it's like an office holiday party where they're doing white elephant gifts and like things go awry and people start dying. So that sounds really exciting. That also comes out at the end of October. So I'm going to read all 3 of those arcs. I'm excited for all 3 of those. They should be good, fun reads. What else am I going to try to read this month? So let's see. I've got 3 more that I have to read this month in terms of what I picked out for myself. So I'm very excited. This week, I am going to read Northanger Abbey. So this is, I think that today's Sunday. On Monday night, my plan is to sit down and read this. It's not as long as I thought it was. I thought it was like 400 pages, but really it's only like 230-ish, which definitely is achievable for me to read in an evening. And I'm very much looking forward to just like sitting down and getting through this. So I will definitely be reading that this month. And then the other thing I'd like to read is The Missing of CLAIRDELUNE. I think it's been enough time since I read A Winter's Promise, so I'm ready to continue on in the series. So those are the 2 I've like planned to get to. And then let me go ahead and pick my 19 books I want to read in 2019, pick some options for my Reading a Sexy mug. I will tell you that I have now removed the 3 remaining nonfiction picks because I'm going to save all 3 of those for nonfiction November. So I will not be getting one of those, but ideally I would like to read 2 of these this month. We'll see. So I picked The 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin. I picked Difficult Women by Roxane Gay. And I picked 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Okay, so that actually works out pretty well. So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna try to read 2 of these. I'm gonna try to read Difficult Women and 6 of Crows. I'm gonna put both of those on my TBR, so hopefully by the time we next speak, I will have gotten through both of those. So that's gonna be the plan there. So that's a pretty good little list to be getting on with for the rest of the month, but I probably do have a little more room, so I'm gonna say, I'm gonna pick 3 more that I'm gonna see if I can get to. Okay, so I want to continue with another classic mystery, so I'm going to put With a Bodkin and Bear by Cyril Hare onto my TBR. This will be hopefully an isolated closed circle mystery. I read my first Cyril Hare book earlier this year and quite enjoyed it, so I'm excited to get to that. So that'll be another mystery I put on. Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahern is a paranormal dystopia kind of thing that's YA and sounds like something I would really love. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on my TBR. I'm not sure if I'll get to it given that I'm already reading 2 YA fantasy things for the rest of the month, so that might not happen, but maybe. And then The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. I definitely, I want to read this the last week of September, I think. So my goal is that I'll get through both this and Northanger Abbey and have 2 of the books on my Classics TBR marked off for this month. So I think with all those, that's a pretty good little lineup of books that will keep me busy for the rest of the month. So anyway, I think that pretty much covers what I'm reading right now. I'm sorry if my energy's a little off. Like I said, I'm a little fevery. So, that's just how it goes. And yeah, let me know if you've got things you're excited to read this month, what they are. If you've got any thoughts about the things that I've got up on my docket, let me know that below. But besides that, I think that will do it for this video. So if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all of that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!